What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another video. Today I want to take some time and talk about my very first Tesla road trip. I want to talk about my entire experience with you guys and just go over the good and the bad and be entirely transparent. Usually when I feel like I hear people talk about Tesla road trips, they are on two opposing ends of a spectrum. We have one extreme that tells you Tesla road trips are no big deal, you're going to be stopping to eat anyway and they're completely fine. And then you have the opposing end that tells you Tesla road trips aren't doable, that you don't want to be waiting an hour every 200 miles to charge, and that the entire thing is just not possible. My experience, as you can probably guess, falls somewhere in between, and I just want to cover all of that in this video. And on top of talking about my own personal experience, at the end of the video, I'll go over some tips that I've learned since going on this road trip. And keep in mind, guys, as I'm talking about this trip, my entire experience is with the 2021 Tesla Model 3 long range, which gives me 353 miles of range on paper. So that's what my experience is based off of. So just keep in mind that your experience is going to be different with a Model S or with a standard range Model 3. So the road trip that I took with my car was a snowboarding trip, and it was a day trip. We left in the morning and then we wanted to come back that same day. It was 200 miles one way, so 400 miles in total. Now, without stopping, this trip is supposed to take a little over 3 hours, but for us, it took 4.5, a little closer to 5 hours on the way there, and on the way back, it took probably around 4 hours or so. Now, we probably made some unnecessary stops on the way there, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but basically, we probably just only needed to stop for around 45 minutes to 55 minutes, and then on the way back, probably the same amount. So the entire thing was extremely doable. All the annoyances that I have are very, very minor, and they're very specific to my scenario. I've made this trip multiple times before with my gas car, so I have a pretty good comparison that I can make. Normally on the way there, we stop once to eat really quick, and then the same thing on the way back once to eat. This time, however, we had to wait a little bit extra, obviously to get my car charged up. So let's talk total charging time. So we ended up stopping twice on the way there. So the very first time was around 55 minutes or so. I was around 18% charge, I believe. And this got me all the way up to the mid 90s. And we had Starbucks and we ate, and this was expected and this was completely fine. And then we left after this. Now, after we left, after driving for a little bit, and when my percentage got to around 50% or so, I started to get a little worried because we had to go all the way up the mountain, back down the mountain, and then we had to go to the nearest supercharger, which was probably around 50 to 75 miles away or so. Now, my car was estimating that I would be able to make it all the way up the mountain and back with around 40% remaining. Keep in mind, we probably still had around 100 miles to go, so I found this a little hard to believe. Now, I knew the power of regenerative braking, but I just didn't know to what extent, and I kind of found it hard to believe that I would go all the way up the mountain and back, and I would still only use around 10%. So I was starting to panic a little bit, and this was more of a mental thing for me. And so we stopped at a second charger and charged for around 20 to 30 minutes extra. Now, this was pretty annoying, especially because I had 3 of my friends with me, and we had another car that was supposed to meet us there, and that made coordinating things a lot more difficult. So when we finally got there, the other car had gotten there around an hour or so earlier, and so we were way late to the party. Now, that's something that I never thought about, is if you're going on another trip with multiple cars and you have a Tesla as one of your cars, that can be annoying to people around you. On top of it, you're gonna be limited to going to places that have superchargers. So for instance, on the way back, we had to stop for another hour or so, and we were forced to eat around the place that only had superchargers. And we had ate there that same morning, so this was slightly annoying. Again, a very, very minor inconvenience, but it can make planning things a lot harder, and it can be slightly annoying to the people that are with you. Again, I know these complaints are very, very unique to my scenario, but there's just so many things and so many different variables that can go into different trips that you might not take into account. If you're just going with a few friends in your car and you're not in a hurry, Tesla road trips are extremely doable and they can be fun. But just keep in mind that there can be some minor but still annoying road bumps along the way. So let's talk about some of the tips that I learned going on this road trip. So number 1, not all superchargers are created equal. Now, I feel like this is a tip that most people know. I feel like most people have an understanding of this, but if you don't, it can delay your road trip for quite a bit. So there's 3 different ones that I've seen. There's a 75 kilowatt supercharger that I saw. This is the slowest one, so this can take quite a long time to charge your car the entire way. This is the second supercharger that I stopped at on the way there. It took probably around 30 minutes for around 15% or so, which was quite a bit annoying. The most standard ones are going to be the 150 kilowatt superchargers, and these are pretty fast. This is the one that I used twice on the trip, and this got my car from around 15% to 90% in around 45 minutes or so. So this one's probably the most common. This is the one that you should try to stick with. And then there's the V3 superchargers that charge at 250 kilowatts, and there's only a few of these out right now, but these are going to be the fastest ones, and they're going to get you the fastest charging times. Although it seems like not by all that much, maybe it's going to save you a few minutes, but nothing too crazy. And tip number 2, if you can, and this is a big if, stay at more superchargers rather than staying at fewer ones, but for longer. This is because of the way battery charging works. So in the higher percentages of your battery, above 70-80%, your battery tends to charge significantly slower than it does at lower percentages. So if you can, keep your battery percentage below 70-80%, you're going to be maximizing your time at these superchargers. So for instance, instead of staying at one, let's say from 15% all the way up to 95%, maybe only go up to 70-80% and then go to another one shortly after if you can. But again, this all depends on your trip, so this might not work for everybody, but this will save you time if you can afford to do so. And number 3, have some faith in the range estimate that your Tesla gives you. It was actually pretty accurate. I doubted it the entire time, and I got really bad range anxiety at some point. But it actually turned out to be pretty accurate. It might have been off by low single digits, but generally it was pretty accurate and a lot more accurate than I thought, especially when going up the mountain and coming back down. It was able to take in regenerative braking and calculate all of that pretty well. The entire experience was doable, it was fun, but it did have its minor annoyances. And again, just keep in mind that your trip might be different depending on the weather, depending on your driving habits and how fast you're going, and also what your car's max range is. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please consider subscribing, and it would mean a lot to me if you hit that thumbs up button. But that's it. I will catch you guys in the next video.